Today I present one of the eminent literary critics has contributed largely to the interpretive writings on Indian philosophy, particularly on Vedanta, that is, the Psychodynamics of Pranava, written by Guru Nithyananda Yathi. After giving the general principles of the self in his 100 verses on self-instruction, Narayana Guru says, "Do not wake anymore, and without sleeping remain as pure knowledge. If this is not possible, establish your bipolarity with the contemplative who has understood the secret of Pranava, Om. In all discipline, there are prerequisites. They can be of a positive or negative kind. To be instructed by a master, the aspirant should have the need for instruction. This is a negative prerequisite. A positive prerequisite is that the aspirant is very eager to be benefited by the wisdom of a master. There is no need to presume that everyone is eager to know the higher secrets of life. Those who already know have no need for further instruction. In a previous verse, the Guru indicates that the nature of the self is pure knowledge which does not replicate into the knower, known and the act of knowledge. Knowledge, the act of knowing, and the knower are nothing other than a primordial knowledge, merging into that infinite supreme knowledge. Remain always as that. It is in continuation of this that he says, if you cannot remain as pure knowledge, then you need to seek a direct relationship with a contemplative who known as the secret of Om. This introduces us to a discipline in which the unequated self is giving itself to be raised by a superior self. In the Bhagavad Gita, we read, raise yourself with yourself. You should never degrade yourself. There is a self that tends to become degraded, and the self that raises the self are seen in the same person. But in Narayana Guru's verse, the self that can raise the self is a contemplative that knows the secret of Pranava. The self which need to be raised is a person who cannot escape the limit of duality or the alternative function of a corporeal body, which is regulated by external events like day and night. The Guru does not ask for service because he lives in a state which transcends all needs. But the disabled attends to the Guru like a mother attends to her child, performing one act after another, according to her understanding of the child's need. Even the most illiterate, uncultured mother instinctively keeps vigil on her child in this way. She may have many other defects, but she is perfect as a mother. The mother is not prompted by fear. She is not a slave. She is overwhelmed by love. She sees the most precious essence of her being in the child. Through the development of her child, she will have her highest fulfillment. Similarly, the disabled attends to all the physical need of the Guru, not as a slave, but out of intense love. The disabled knows that Guru is the light of his or her soul and wants to keep that light burning. The osmosis that takes place in the relationship between the enlightened Guru and the light-seeking disabled is here given as the simplest way of becoming enlightened on the secret of Pranava. When the self was first introduced in the Atmopadesha Shataka, it was described as Karu, the self which prompts a person to act. The Brahma Sutra of Vedanta are also called the Sharirika Sutra, sutras that concern the honor of the body. Here, seva is an act performed with understanding, action prompted by pure knowledge. Action performed by a physical body can be binding, but in this case, the outward action is only an expression of a soulful enlightenment. So it loses the negativity of actions which are prompted by the urges of incipient memories. Any person who wants to relate the lower self to the higher self has to be derive his or her promptings from understanding rather than from urges that come from prior conditioning. The key to this liberating relationship is described here as those who have transcended the cyclic birth and death by knowing the secret of Pranava. Thus, it is also made clear that Pranava is a secret language. When written, it is only a formal symbol of AUM, and when spoken, it is only a nominal symbol, but within the symbol, a great word of epistemological import is lying hidden. What is obvious is phenomenal. What is hidden is noumenal. Making a breakthrough from the phenomenal to the noumenal is what is indicated here as the secret of Pranava. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, it is said that one attains the state of final absorption in the changeless state of the noumenon by contemplating on the true nature of Pranava. It is paradoxical that the veil that is to be removed is the veil that comes from empirical knowledge, immediate perception, which brings such a conviction that we are certain of what we are experiencing. This certitude is the toughest obstacle in knowing the real, the noumenon. In addition to empirical knowledge, the Yoga Sutra identify four other kinds of mental modifications which veil the noumenon and which are to be restrained. Illusory knowledge, fancy, lassitude and memory. Although Narayana Guru didn't explicitly say one should not have lassitude or not be inertial and gross, but simply said one should give one service to a guru. That implies the cultivation of a vigilance prompted by a deep love. For example, just like the mother keeping watch over her child, the disabled sit sleepless to guard the sleep of Guru from being disturbed. Although we may think it is painful to go without sleep, when we see how a mother, even when she is seemingly asleep, is roused to action by the slightest movement of her child, we see what is expected of a disabled who is keeping himself or herself in the service of a contemplative. This is how we start understanding the secret of Pranava. The non-dualistic totality is called Advaita, not two. However, the reference to two is imperative. Explicitly, there are two aspects and implicitly the two are counterparts of a single reality. Between the counterparts, there should be an essential bipolarity which unifies the two into one. Such is the scheme of the absolute. When the counterparts are established by absolute bipolarity, the union will leave no separation between the two and will be rid of duality. The process of bipolarity indicates an attitude which is enjoyable when there is nothing but the highest value of joy remaining. The union is complete. Then there is nothing to be accomplished and no agency for accomplishment. The endeavor to unite and the consequential attainment of union are peculiar to a number of situations of counterparts coming together, such as in the union of couples, the context in which teacher and taught are in a state of teaching and learning, when questioning are cleared by answers, and when words explode into meanings. For this reason, two special terms are given is spiritual discipline, worshipful adoration, and final absorption in a state of contemplation. Although worshipful adoration is given to the Pranava, Om, in various Upanishads, both major and minor, and the Mandukya Upanishad is devoted entirely to the explanation of the Pranava. The best introductory exposition comes in the opening chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad. In the context of Gita, Arjuna the seeker places himself at the feet of the Lord Krishna in complete dedication with absolute willingness to serve him. Arjuna is the worshipper and Krishna is the worshipped. In this mantra of the Chandogya Upanishad also, Om is that which is to be worshipped, and the priest at the sacrificial altar who is loudly chanting Om is the worshipper. He is in service. It is this context that was ununited in Narayana Guru's verse, in which the aspirant is asked to be in the service of the wisdom teacher, the Muni, who knows the secret of Om. Mode of worshipping Om is given as reverence to the imperishable foundation of everything that is seen here. The psychophysical carrier of life is like a burning candle. When a candle burns, it gives a release of energy and a light that illuminates everything around. Even so is the burnt sacrifice which we experience as life. The triumphant life that glorifies its own basic truth is said to be articulating Om loudly, just like the chanting priest of Samaveda giving his loud utterance of Om. Even when the body and mind burn away, the essence continues as imperishable. Rasa is not merely the essence of a thing, it is that essence of perennial value which is, as Keats says, a joy forever. Hence the Sanskrit definition Rasa Savadhan. Ras is a enjoyable. The term Buddha, although the flux of becoming is apparently transient, the essence of the transient world is Prithvi. Prithvi is that which is spacious to accommodate various forms of life. Even though the ever rotating and revolving earth can very well be taken as the changeful, has been consistently holding within its grasp the seven seas and the great mountains of the world. Its substantiality is even figuratively called terra firma. The fourfold actualization of a purposive life is said to be the envisioning of one's intrinsic nature, meaningfully giving expression to that nature, desiring to actualize the unfoldment of one's trust form, and ultimately transcending all relative modes of achievement. The Pranava is such that it covers all four aspects. Thus, it is at once the macrocosm that encompasses the universe and the microcosm that is being epitomized in the symbol Om, which a person can meditate on. Contemplation of Om. In the Chandogya Upanishad, we have seen how the Pranava is to be worshipped. The entire text of Mandukya Upanishad deals with the contemplative depth of Om. Every pulsation of consciousness has a central locus for where the ripple of consciousness expands. If nothing stops the expansion, it can culminate in infinitude. The central locus is marked in the mind as a non-specific indication. It becomes specific only when it is circum to be identified with conditional consciousness. There are several mystical disciplines in the world. In India, Saivat, Vaishnavate, Brahmanic, Yogic, Tantric, Buddhist and Jain school of mysticism are in vogue. The Chinese developed the Taoist discipline. The Buddhism that entered Japan from India through China developed Zen mysticism. The devotional aspect of Vedanta combined with Islam gave rise to Sufi mysticism. Christian mysticism has its roots in the mysticism of the Kabbalah. It is also influenced by Egyptian schools. What is common in all mysticism? In a paradoxical loop where the obvious disappears in the oblivious and the oblivious reveals itself mostly in an indecipherable language of the heart rather than in the rational that happens in the head. The mystical purport of Om is developed into a science, will become the most exciting and absorbing science of mysticism. Jesus said, I am the goal, the path and the light. The goal he marked is the kingdom of God. Ultimately, the kingdom of God is discovered in the seeker's heart. Thus, the ultimate is in the primeval. When a person sits to contemplate on Om, he is surrounded by silence. The silence that is felt in the heart can be seen spread out in all directions without any frontiers. In that silence, there is an unfathomable depth. It has a sublime height that can never fully be reached. It is with the awe-inspiring wonder of that silence that one slowly opened the mouth to articulate with a symbol A. The sound becomes full-throated and the mouth is opened to its widest possibility. Then, like the tapering of a funnel, the syllable A transforms into the syllable U until the lips come together in M. The tapering articulation vanishes into an ultimate silence which coincides with the primeval signs with which the contemplation of Om was begun. What was and what is only an infinite range of silence. The articulated sound is like the rise and fall of a sound wave, an inundation with a peak and the valley. The silence continue in the heart of the intonate sound, and that unbroken ground of all is suggestive of the imperishable. Whether in science or mysticism, one has to clear one's ground before settling down to the serious business of penetrating to the depth of the real that is shrouded in the enchanting veil of the phenomenal. In the Mandukya Upanishad, such a course is systematically given, which takes us not only to the variegated periphery, but also to the depth and height of the mystical richness of Om. The Gospel according to St. John begins with a pointed reference to the Word. He says, "In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God." If we take the word spoken of by St. John literally, that can also lead us to confusion. In St. John's original text, his reference was to the Greek word logos, meaning the causal and primordial intelligence, which is exstantially continuing in and through creating an eternal creative and dissolving force. St. John borrowed the term logos from his personal instructor, Philo-Judaea, who was an enthusiast of Plato's philosophy. Plato himself adopted the word logos as the ascending fire of creation and the descending fire of dissolution. In the light of such a study, the word equated with God's creation and with God himself cannot be three-lettered or four-lettered word spoken or written by someone somewhere. Only by comprehending the imperishable existence of everything that is evolved and dissolving in the flux of becoming, and also that which transcends time, can one grasp the connotation of Om implied in this mantra, which can be quoted with logos or the word. To make the meaning explicit, the three aspects of time, the past, the present and future, are specially underlined here for reflection. Only by experiencing a thing do we become impressed by the truth of its existence. As we move in time, our appreciation of existence are sequentially piled one over the other, and everything of the past is held close within the ambit of the present in the form of memory, which comes as conceptual configuration to complement percept. It is by the relevance of that memory that we give our present its vast magnitude both in space and time. There is no past sitting anywhere apart from the immediate awareness of the present. Similarly, there is no future kept in storage somewhere except in the anticipation and imagination of an individuated mind. Existence cannot support itself, at least for the recognition and appreciation of it, unless every form of existence is cogitated by our comprehending minds. This shows the methodological excellence of the Indian Rishi who placed sit. These two aspects of truth are inseparable. That is why Nadarajaguru defines science as a discipline which transforms the visible into the calculable. It is not necessary to get into all the jargon of philosophy to admit and appreciate the perennial persistence of fundamental values. That is why even a sentimental poet can readily see the truth of a perennial joy dwelling in the heart of beauty. Here we see the relevance of another value coming as the culminating mark of our search. Bishop Berkeley insisted that the validity of the world resides in its perception, as at percipi. When he was asked what would happen to the world if there was no one there to perceive it, he said, in such a indigency, God will be perceiving it. We quote Berkeley here to show the limitation of human consciousness. Granted that something exists outside the scope of time, the Rishi wants us to know that even that is to be included in the imperishable Om. This first mantra of the Mandukya Upanishad should be read along with the great dictum of the Chandogya Upanishad that thou art. The second mantra of the Mandukya Upanishad also gives one of the four great dictum of the Upanishadic literature. This self is the absolute. The whole mantra is as follows. All here is the absolute indeed. This self is the absolute. This same self is forelimbed. After establishing the homogeneity of all individual factors that are vacandated with the term all, the method of reduction is very beautifully presented in the epistemization of all as the self, the indicative term. This is difficult to explain without qualifying what this is. The qualification is given with a categorical statement. This self is the absolute. The third line of the mantra is a descriptive statement which directs the student or aspirant to make a positive methodological analysis, which its ultimate or conclusive position will give us an integrated or holistic philosophy, where in all steps of analysis are employed only to arrive at a final synthesis. In the inferential envisioning of the participation of the eminent and transcendent, there reside a mystical experience common to all schools of mysticism, which is alluded to as love for the absolute, mystical frenzy, devotion, piety, divine eros, etc. In Indian mystical literature, this is described as bhakti. Both Shankara and Narayana Guru hold the same view of bhakti as the continuous contemplative introjection into one's being by which time transforms into pure duration and space, abolishes itself into Shunyata. In Bhakti Darshana of his Darshanamala, Narayana Guru writes, meditation on the self is bhakti, that by which the self is blissful. With that the knower of the self always meditates upon the self by the self. Brahma is meditates upon because Brahma is blissful. Constant meditation on Brahma thus is known as bhakti. In verse 32 of Viveka Chudamani, Shankara also writes, among the set of means to bring about moksha. Bhakti is the greatest continuous contemplation of one's essential nature, is said to be bhakti. Others say that continuous contemplation of the truth of oneself is bhakti. In the reincarnation theory of the Hindus and the transmigration theory of the Buddhists, two different postulates are employed to trace the trajectory of an individuating personality passing through several embodied beings with a history of what is popularly known as karma. From the moment of the fertilization of an ovum to the hour of the birth of the child, the fetus is in deep sleep. In that state, it has no desires and does not see any dreams. This long period of the unconscious state of the growing fetus can be called sushupti. In spite of having no conscious desire or semi-conscious dreams, the growing fetus is active. This is one of the greatest miracles of this world. A thick and slimy drop of vital fluid that was transferred from the male generative organ to the female womb joins with an ovum, then duplicates and replicates in a strange manner without the conscious deliberation of anyone. It becomes fully formed into a small person with perfect hands and legs and the senses to perceive. It is paradoxical that the child is growing in the womb of the mother without being attended to by either of its parents. Narayana Guru remembers this prenatal state with gratitude. Within the womb, O Lord of good, was that lump in hand, this humble self, with what exceeding love, who, but thou, kind one, nurtured it into life, ordered by thee, all comes about, thus knowing this, their servant to thee now surrenders all. Ancient savants and modern men of science vaguely realize that there is a super cosmic intelligence hiding its plan from everyone while keeping itself busy creating everything from a subatomic particle to a supernova. When we chant the mantra Om, this sonic vehicle transports us to the last terminus of the journey of rational intelligence and bring us to the very home from where the song of creation has emerged. The seer of Mandukya Upanishad says, Esa Sarveshwara. Why Sarveshwara? Because he is the unmoved mover, sitting where he is, goes everywhere, and without moving, he overtakes the fastest of all moving entities. Incidentally, Aristotle should be credited for defining God as the unmovable mover. It is probable that Aristotle got this idea from his juvenile experience of falling in love with some young Greek girl, who must have learned her cunning by combining the strategies of Artemis and Aphrodite. A lover has only one dream, to make his otherwise depressive looking beloved bloom into a smile, however transient that smile is. There is a Hercule in every lover who is willing to do any amount of labor to please the beloved. God is the most impossible of all beloveds. He is not sitting there as one person. He can be experienced only as the spasmodic convulsion of urges and appetites, which are the first cause of all movements. Love does not work alone. Love is born with a twin sister, hate. Between them is placed a ping pong of life. In planning its gigantically intrinsic game, God has transformed himself into a genius of mathematics of whom Pythagoras knew more than Aristotle. Even when creation was in its cradle, God was careful in structuring the atomic models of basic elements. He never made a mistake in matching the number of protons with the number of electrons. Consequently, his atoms never crossfire. Only God knows how many eons passed when he was all alone to appreciate the efficient harmony with which his creation was progressing until he got aides like Galileo, who gave a third eye to modern scientists to look at the marvel of God's creation. Then came an even more valiant person, Sir Isaac Newton, who became lyrical in his appreciation of God's precision techniques. He admitted without reservation that God knows. The seer of the Upanishad knew it long before. So he said, Esa Sarvajna. He is the all-knower. In the Gita, Krishna goes one step further and describes himself as the Father who has invested the sperm of every being into the respective womb from which they are born. So it is said, the source, womb of everything. In this third quarter, the circle comes to a full round. Birth and dissolution are only two phases of the same reality. So it is described as both the beginning and end of all beings. The ground from where one can start is the alpha. If you drew a vertical parameter cutting through the point of alpha, the two poles can be referred to as two omegas, the denominator omega and the numerator omega. In Indian mysticism, the denominator omega is Nirvikalpam and the numerator omega is Savikalpam, the absorption that one gets into the sublime height, whether of identification with objects, Savikarma, identification with objects, Savikara, identification with bliss, Sanadana, or identification with self, Sasmita, is said to be Sabija, still retaining the seed to manifest and proliferate. On the other hand, in the denominator omega, Nirvikalpa, all races, moods are shorn of their gunas, nature modalities, so they become totally merged in the changeless. There they assume the status of Sanatan, Shivam and Advaitam. Between the numerator omega and denominator omega, the alpha gains a new status of being centralized instead of being the subterranean ground of all. The fact of life has its relevancy only within the world of time and space, where a continuous program of transformation is always going on. The simplest example is our own life on earth. All physically sound people go into deep sleep and after lying, therefore awake, absolutely unconscious, they wake up and go from one program to another. Again in the night they are knocked off and go into the same unconscious sleep. This is very similar to coming out of the dust with an individual personality and again going back into the ignoble state of the dust. This is a repetitive process. Life becomes far more intriguing and worthwhile when the essence of it is related to the universal witness of the opening and closing of cosmic cycle. Here we make a departure from the intricate machinery of nature and go into the simplest of all realities, which is described only with a non-functional function, is, that is Sat, or more elaborately Om, which alone is. Om Tat Ev Sat. It is a consciousness which is throbbing within. The Rishi says, no. Is it an elaboration of consciousness which is seen as all this? Again the answer is no. Now putting all this together, we naturally have to dismiss everything that is thought, felt and experienced within, and all that is registered by the sense and mind as existing outside. One may suspect that the reality under discussion could be a subtle condensation of possibilities that can someday elaborate itself into time and space with variegated form and names. That way, it could be a potential consciousness through and through. But we have a conditional mind. Whenever we hear terms like knowing, becoming aware of, or conscious of, we create a playground and put on one side of the field a mysterious entity experiencing a state of awareness, and on the other side the drama that is unfolding to it. Such kind of conditional status have no relevancy here. Swami Prajnananda, in his illustrious book, A Historical Study of Indian Music, gives a beautiful account of Pranava in the context of music. Before that, he presents the word that blasts as Spoda. The science of Spoda is one of the earliest science of semiotics developed in India. We give here a gist of what the Swami says. The world emanated from the eternal sound, Shabda or Spoda. The casual sound of Spoda has two aspects, Dhvani, sound, and Varnam, alphabet character. When sounds are pure and simple and do not convey any definite meaning, they are known as Dhanyatmaka Shabda. When they are intelligible and capable of being expressed by letters, they are known as Varnatmaka Shabda. According to Ubhavasha, Varna alone is expressive of Shabda. This view is endorsed by Shankara and Shabara Swamin. Patanjali also accepts this view in his views, holding the views that sounds are articulate when they are turned into letters. The audible or articulated sound is popularly known as Vaigari. The meaning of a word is ultimately expressed by spoda and not by sounds of momentary existence. When a word or sentence is conceived as an indivisible unit, that is called spoda. Spoda is both the vibrating sound and the gestaltic presence. The entire space in which the cosmic bodies are generated and held can be looked upon as a cosmic electromagnetic field. The same principle can be seen applied in the structural morphology and cytology of individual living bodies. The cosmic electromagnetic field is said to be controlled by Tripura Sundari, whereas the interior electromagnetic field of the body-mind-spirit is said to be controlled by the Kundalini, which resides in the Muladhara. According to the Tantrics, when Nada or Paravak is stirred in the Muladhara by Kundalini, there is a spouting of energy which goes to the Swadhisthana and become Pasandi, a kind of natural samadhi comes. Just like the growth of the fetus or infant baby is held away from public gaze and is not disturbed by any sensation, the word forms in the heart, anahata, where it is in the state of madhyama. These three aspects are the most subtle. The more subtle and the less subtle aspect of pranava. From the subtle, the articulated word emerges in a gross form at the vishuddhi or throat plexus. Then alone it is Vaigari. In most people, the opposing energy, channeling, cancel each other out and very little energy is left to conduct the daily course of life. Three major driving forces that can easily be exaggerated into pathological energy expenditures are the erotic passion to possess and dominate one love object, the instantiable agreed to possess the means to dominate others, and the hungering goaded by anxiety regarding one's future security, paired with the hoarding of exchange value tokens such as money, to transcend the physically impressive need of the body and mind. One should have a clear envisioning of the spiritual worthwhileness of seeking union with the absolute or realizing the supreme nature of one's self. If the former kind of demand is like driving down a hill, the latter, that is one's spiritual pursuit, is of an ascending order. A lot of stamina has to be put into the disciplining of one's body and mind, even to bring it to a stabilized position from which to commence one's ultimate search in warning oneself to the task. Vyasa thinks that there are 9 kinds of gradations in evoking energy from its hidden source and spending a ingeniously for the actualization of the highest values one conceives of. The first division Vyasa makes is of those with mild energy, medium energy and intense energy. The second series related to the orientation which each group has in terms of persisting consciousness or spiritual awareness. Some have only a faint idea of their spiritual awareness and some have a middling consciousness of the call of the spirit. There are others who are supremely conscious of the spiritual foundation on which phenomenally rests. Then there are those who are capable of drawing energy to support spiritual consciousness. In that also, variations can come according to one's ability to tap the dormant energies which can be experienced physically, mentally and psychically. Love and hatred are catalysts which evoke the flow of energy. Hatred can cause a sudden surge of energy which adversely affect the entire physical system of a person. This is short-lived, like the bursting flame of ignited gasoline. Love, on the other hand, is a steady flow which proceeds more and more energy in the long run. The purer the love, the greater is the chance of furthering the continuous flow of energy. Hatred has with it an intermittent operation of ambivalence, in which obsession and inhibition soon wears out and both receiving and giving become obsessive. In the spiritual pursuit, the idea is to give up totally and the receiving act like fountain, where what is given in the form of love is received back in the form of grace. Even when a person is physically weak and confronted by adverse situations, the love to give increases. This is evident in the case of Indian saints like Tukaram and Mirabai, and Christian mystics like St. John and of the Cross. Their physical debilities hardly stopped them from channelizing large founts of energy to accomplish their spiritual goals. The only energizing force that is not known to modern physiology is the release of chemical certain substances such as adrenaline. But how exactly it become an energizing force with calories of glycogen, etc., has not been fully investigated. All experiences can be considered as items of a gross world of transactional variety, a subjective world of conceptual composition, and the residual existence of a consciousness that turns upon itself. Finally, all these are accepted as the phenomenal wearingness arising out of the immanence of a transcendent supreme being. The methodology of reduction is a universally accepted formula for systemization of philosophy. Sankhya is basically dual in its epistemology. It accepts a plurality of souls and a homogeneous principle of nature as the counterpart of Purusha. Thus, there already exists a nearly worked out reduction on the side of Prakriti. There is not anything uncommon in attempting a similar unification of Purushas by marketing out one Purusha, which is distinct from all individual soul and yet has a place in the animating principle of all individuated being. The sadhana concerning Prakriti is that of handling the operations of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas with discernment. This can be well balanced with advantages by holding Ishvara or the spirit par excellence as a model for directing the subjective consciousness to relate in an appropriate manner with the changing experiences that alternate between the wakeful, the dream and deep sleep. Ultimately, everything that has gone into the perceptual, conceptual and causal is to be seen as the horizontalizing phenomenon that is happening within a determined possibility within the noumenon. The omniscience in this respect become modified with the cancelling out of the knower and the known. When Om is looked upon as Ishvara or the supreme teacher, the omniscience of that special person is to be understood in the sense in which we have understood knowledge finding its norm within the four limbs of Pranava.